Welcome back to day 2 of the 21st or 22nd annual Streaming Media West, depending on who you ask and how you count. Once again, I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, the editor and VP of Streaming Media, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. One of the reasons this show is so great, maybe the biggest reason, is because of all of you in the audience. Our speakers are amazing, our sponsors are amazing, but the people in the audience really help turn a show from good to great, and everything I've heard about all the sessions that have happened yesterday has been feedback about how wonderfully engaged the audience has been, and that's certainly what I saw in the sessions I was in. So thank you all very much. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. Again, some quick housekeeping notes before we go right into a terrific keynote discussion this morning. Once again, the exhibits will open after the keynote at 10 a.m. with a coffee break sponsored by Verizon Media. Verizon Media also sponsored our breakfast each morning. There will be a couple of meetups in the Exhibit Hall Networking Lounge again today at 10 a.m. Esports and sports streaming folks, if you want to convene there and network and meet like-minded people, that's a great place to do it. And then at 2:30, a video engineering meetup that kind of goes along with our Video Engineering Summit track. Once again, the most up-to-date version of the program will be found on the website or in the Streaming Media West app. That app is called Hello Crowd. Download it, go into the Streaming Media West event, and you can find the latest up-to-date program information there. Conference Wi-Fi, again, sponsored by EasyDRM, and we thank them for that. The network is Streaming Media Wi-Fi, and the password is SimplifyDRM. That's on some of the signs and the slides as well. But as with yesterday, look for anyone with a purple tag on their badge or anyone wearing a hat, and they'll be able to help you with questions like, how do I get on the Wi-Fi? Again, Mobion is doing our live stream and is live streaming the keynotes and the sessions that will be in this room today. They also stream the Reader's Choice Awards, and they'll be streaming the closing session, which is today at 4:15. Please stick around for that. You'll want to check that out. Roger Pantos from Apple will be wrapping things up for us today at 4:15. So with that, let's move on into today's keynote. We had a terrific keynote yesterday, and today's is going to be just as good, if not better, I'm sure. I'm really excited to kick off our second day with this keynote focused on the next generation of sports streaming, featuring some of the most innovative leaders in sports streaming today from the World Surf League, NASCAR, and WWE, hosted by Google, which helps power and monetize those streaming sports offerings. Think back to 10 years ago, when either you were lucky enough to watch the big race, match, or tournament from the event itself, or more likely you were watching it from your couch. But of course, as a consumer today, you have many more options about how to watch video, where to watch sports events, and even when to watch sports events. And for sports organizations, the evolution of sports streaming means there's more ways than ever to reach and engage fans than ever before. From new direct-to-consumer platforms and apps across mobile, web, and connected TV, to new ways to personalize the viewing experience, from content to ads, sports organizations have found new strategies and technologies to evolve their sport and grow their businesses, and sports streaming has never been better. Today, we're honored to have Kiran Paranjpe, who is Google's head of sports partnerships, lead a discussion with Brendan Reiley from NASCAR, Rich Robinson from the World Surf League, and Jared Smith from WWE to understand what strategies and technologies they're using to successfully evolve their businesses for the future of sports streaming. And with that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Kiran Paranjpe from Google. Kiran?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiran Paranjpe, and I'm happy to be here today hosting this panel on the next generation of sports streaming. First, let me thank Eric, Troy, Jose from Streaming Media for inviting my guests and me to talk about how sports organizations are building and leveraging innovation in technology, shifting consumer preferences, and key partnerships to deliver sustainable, fan-centric streaming experiences. Sports is one part of the larger landscape covered at Streaming Media West. I would say, my guests and I would argue that sports plays an outsized role in driving innovation in the larger media and entertainment space. That includes infrastructure, distribution, user experience, and revenue models, and that ranges from mass reach broadcast TV viewing to highly personalized second screen digital experiences. Fans increasingly expect to watch anytime, anywhere via direct-to-consumer platforms, and likewise, advertisers seek to reach seek the reach of broadcast with the personalization and relevance of digital. At Google, we're happy to support our partners however they decide to reach audiences, engage fans, and monetize their content. In my specific role at Google, I focus on enabling sports organizations to fund their digital platforms through advertising using the Google Ad Manager monetization platform. Google Ad Manager's video solutions are built around the idea that digital publishers, brands, and consumers all win when advertising is seamless, personalized, and measurable. This includes integrations and support for the most challenging and valuable use cases, including live streaming and connected TV delivery, leveraging features like dynamic ad insertion and smarter ad breaks. So I'm happy to be joined on stage by 3 digital leaders and Google partners, representing 3 innovative sports organizations. Brendan Reiley from NASCAR, Jared Smith from WWE, and Rich Robinson from World Surf League. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about how each of their organizations is seizing the streaming opportunity, trends that are driving business and technology success, and ultimately how they distribute, market, and monetize their streaming products. So please welcome the panel to the stage.
Sorry. Should've gone down one more.
All right, first, why don't we get started with introductions? So can each of you share your name, role, company, and what devices and platforms you personally use most to watch TV, whether it be sports or other video content?
Sure, so I'm Jared Smith, good morning, and I lead the digital products at WWE. I use just about every platform. I think I have probably 8 different ones in my home, and then even more in the office. Although probably my primary is Android TV right now.
Great answer.
Rich Robinson, SVP of Digital for World Surf League. Do all consumer products, digital live streaming, pretty much all software development for the league. My personal consumption, all connected devices, all connected TV apps. Pretty much spend most of my time kind of breaking apart their interfaces, figuring out how their editorial teams are leveraging those platforms to compete with their linear counterparts and demonstrate ways in which that they create stickier experiences than what the linear folks are doing.
Hi everybody, I'm Brendan Reiley. I'm the Revenue Operations Director at NASCAR Digital Media. My team is really in charge of the entire ad experience on NASCAR.com and our owned and operated properties. Anywhere from campaign management, inventory management, programmatic, compliance, ad tech. Pretty much everything's handled by my team. And my personal experience with streaming right now is I'm a recent cord cutter. So I'm using Sling basically for my live TV and then using an antenna, which is kind of weird, but it works pretty awesome. With sports, actually, I've been using like ESPN's OTT platform pretty regularly, and NHL TV. Pretty much everything is OTT at this point in my house.
Yeah. So, that speaks to some of what's happening in terms of industry trends that are shaping the TV industry, especially in sports streaming. As you think about those trends, how would you describe the ecosystem for sports and live event streaming today? And what would you say are the top 1 or 2 trends and developments shaping the industry?
Sure. It's a super exciting time right now. I think as a consumer, you have more options than you've ever had before, and I'd say that's mostly a great thing. But it does create some confusion or challenges in trying to figure out where to watch certain things at times. I think from the content producer side, it's also super exciting. But I think there's a big challenge in how do you get your content discovered, and I think that's in this fragmented and complex ecosystem now. That's a big challenge. As far as trends, I feel like one of the key trends that we're seeing is just vertical integration, where you have the players just trying to own more of the entire experience, from content production to content distribution to the actual user relationship. I think you're seeing all of the players, whether it's Netflix, Disney, Apple, and you go down the line, Warner, all of them I think are expanding vertically up and down that stack, which is creating some really interesting dynamics right now.
Yeah, for me, we've seen a shift. When we started out, we kind of treated all video as the same. Our live events business really is focused on going to different beaches around the world, producing a live broadcast, clipping it, and serving it in VOD format. More recently, we've really started to think a lot more about ways in which our live stream and the live experience starts to diverge from just the clipped VOD form. Ways in which, what sports is strong at is obviously creating those moments that have that intangible live value, and focusing on that and trying to figure out ways to continue to advance that. So create opportunities where, yes, we know there's a ton of competition in the space. Here are some reasons why it's important that you tune in now, beyond just the fact that there's a satisfaction of knowing that this wave is breaking right now in some part of the world that you're currently kind of living vicariously through our broadcast with. I think that's leading to some decisions we're making on the tech side, favoring low latency, taking advantage of some of the opportunities we have in having kind of a vertical alignment in the way that we produce our events. So taking elements of our scoring system and the data we produce as part of our broadcast and actually stitching them together in interesting ways. That's been super exciting for us, and I feel like that's going to be a trend that we kind of continue to invest in.
I mean, for me, one of the best trends I'm seeing is actual useful information that users are getting from OTT products. And, I remember the kind of the beginning of second screen experiences. I think my first experience was like with Lost, actually, that long ago, where you get like a character profile, but now you're able to see different camera angles. You're able to hear different broadcasts or get relevant stats information. So I feel like we're really helping the user have a better, standard television watching experience with what we can offer them OTT.
All right. So, with that, I think something, I've keyed in on, and we talked about this earlier today, was, the proliferation of platforms, devices, experiences that enable, whether it's cord cutting, cord shaving, whatever you want to call it, or second screen experiences that complement, the sort of primary broadcast and sort of distribution model. The degree to which, as a content producer, as an IP owner, sports organization, you have to build and support so many of those, and this is something that came up even yesterday as well. But at the same time, the innovation that's happening in the space, it's exciting, right, to see what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, to kind of meet and surpass what customers and viewers are looking for. I think that's something that's certainly very important to us at Google. Let's dive a little bit deeper, kind of a question for each of you based on what you have going on in the space. Jared, we'll start with you. WWE recently relaunched the WWE Network. This included a migration in infrastructure as well as an update to the customer experience. What trends or factors drove this pretty ambitious and I would say risky decision?
Sure. So WWE, if you go back a handful of years, was more of a B2B business and has really been pushing towards being more direct to consumer, more digital, more global. And so that was the kind of big driver of what we wanted to do, was make sure that we had an infrastructure in place that will allow us to not just continue that evolution, but accelerate that evolution. We need to make sure that we are able to collect data, listen to fans, effectively, and then take that information and use it to inform our content production decisions, our content distribution decisions, to build user experiences that serve our fans well, And so that ultimately was the driver to take the WWE Network product, which is coming up on 6 years old in February, and give it that new foundation to fuel that future growth.
And what do early results look like?
We're really pleased. You're right, it was a risky and complicated endeavor, and so there was a lot of effort from a lot of people that went into it, but we're really pleased with how it's gone so far. It's well received by our fans, which is most important. And as I said, it now gives us a much more robust foundation to continue to do more localization and more exciting direct-to-consumer activities like personalization and stuff like that.
Yeah. So Rich, you touched upon this a little bit in your opening remarks. World Surf League streams its events, including the Championship Tour, on your O&O platforms and elsewhere. But live events in surfing are difficult to schedule. You're at the whim of weather, surf conditions. How does your streaming experience provide fans the opportunity to watch, wherever they are, given that kind of flexibility or variability?
Yeah, I mean, your earlier kind of question around how to maintain our presence in every place we need to be is I think always going to be a challenge. I mean, we're constantly having to identify tech debt in particular platforms as software platforms converge around standards or then fragment again. That's always going to be a cycle. For us, the trend that Jared, that you highlighted of getting more vertically aligned is critical to us. As you mentioned, with weather being the biggest factor behind our competitions, we can't say with any certainty that kickoff is going to be at 3 p.m., which basically means we invite our fans along for the ride with us. That one-to-one connection is critical to us. So that marketing lever of targeted advertising, of push notifications, of one-to-one channels, of owned channels for us is really critical. And it's a bizarre exercise. We wake up every morning and look at the conditions, compare them to the forecast, and decide as a collective whether we're going to go live on air. When we do make that decision, it's the best message we have. So it becomes very easy to try and fire all flares and really invite everyone in. But it does mean that we're always looking for ways that we can push some of the limitations when it comes to marketing on caching delays, that it's going to take 20 minutes for my ad to make it out into a particular network to get in front of an audience. That's potentially a segment of competition that we've missed an audience for. So any ways that we can continue to kind of pull back the layers on the calls we make internally to adapt to the ways in which we need to get the message out becomes really critical to us. And we've been, we talk about second stream experiences. We've been digital first for a long time, primarily out of necessity. Surfing actually had its first live streams in like 2001 from Tahiti, and so our fans are actually very used to finding us online. They're well accustomed to the challenge of knowing when we're on. So maybe a bit of those tools come a bit natural to our core audience. But in trying to adapt, that model to a larger audience, we have to try and find strengths in those same challenges and teach new fans how to kind of jump along with us and travel the tour with us.
Yeah. So Brendan, NASCAR digital media. You focused your streaming investment on the second screen NASCAR Drive app. Having been to a race recently, one of the fan experiences I came to learn about was, renting the radio sets and having a sort of a second listening, I guess, experience while you're at the race. The NASCAR Drive app as a second screen experience for at home or sort of on the go viewing. How do you think about that as a complementary experience, and how do you measure success for an app like that?
So that's pretty funny that you mentioned that, because I think our audiences and our live events have actually been using the second screen experience for 20 years now. Like you said, they'll rent headphones and listen to the scanner so they can listen to the spotters, the crew chief, and their favorite driver. So enhancing that live experience. NASCAR races are crazy, right? We have that sound, right? And you experienced this, Kiran. when you're near a race car and it's going 180 miles an hour, the air is displaced around you. You have the smell of the gas, the smell of the burnt rubber. So with NASCAR Drive, we really tried to give the audience something unique for them at their at-home experience. And we do that across actually mobile web and app by giving them access to our drivers' in-car cameras. So, imagine riding shotgun with your favorite driver and feeling that experience that they have, hearing the sound and seeing what they see, trying to give our users something really unique that they can, make their experience even better. I had, one experience with NASCAR Drive myself. It was actually last year at the Charlotte Roval. It was the last lap of the Charlotte Roval, last turn of the last lap. My favorite driver, Ryan Blaney, was in third place. So I was actually using the app at home. I was watching TV using the app. And we actually had a 360 rig in his car that day. So that's kind of a cool thing about NASCAR. We have so much access to our drivers. So, we got permission to put a 360 rig in his car. And I remember watching that last lap, the two drivers in front of him, Martin Truex and Jimmy Johnson, wrecked. And, I was watching on TV, seeing that happen, kind of freaking out. And then I started scrolling my phone around, watching these guys wreck. Then I scrolled back around and see my driver fist pumping. And it was just an awesome experience. Like, that was the one time I saw, our product in the way that maybe a fan sees it. And I was like really proud of it. So we measure success by feedback, by, seeing our views grow and our revenue grow from it.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic experience, and I think it's something that I certainly let all of my partners know about. Like, you got to check this out, like, as a second screen experience. Motor racing maybe has like a certain, in terms of the cameras you can install, there is this advantage, you could say, to what you can do there and sort of customer need almost that you're addressing, but it just makes it such an engaging experience. Let's go deeper into the technology, pretty core to what what this conference is about. When launching a new or updated streaming experience, a lot of external attention will be paid to the UX, monetization models, things that people can sort of touch and see. But the underlying infrastructure, especially for live events, can really make or break your audience development, your monetization strategies, your retention strategies. In the last 2 years, what new technology has given you more confidence that you can deliver an ideal product? And what gaps do you feel like are left that you'd like to see the industry and providers address? Brendan, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, we're always trying to make our streams more efficient and kind of cut out middlemen. And we've recently moved away from satellite to using cloud for streaming. And actually, we've implemented Google's dynamic ad insertion, which has been a huge step for us. It's giving you guys a little bit more control on the streaming side, but it is allowing us to advertise to our audience across devices. We couldn't do that previously. We were missing out on mobile web, so implementing DAI has really helped with that. So, it's helped us become more efficient. I remember kind of the first time we tested it out, I was a little nervous about it, to be honest with you, because our first race of the season is the Daytona 500, so we're always kind of testing our big race, right? But we had the guys from Google DAI on the call with us, super smart guys, gave us a little white glove service, and everything seemed to go great. But that's really been a huge step for us in monetization and streaming reliability.
All right, great. Rich.
Yeah, for us, we take remote production as far as you can. And so, the biggest shift I've seen in the last 5 years or so that we've been doing it has definitely been similar, move off of satellite everywhere. We used to bring sat with us to every single tourist top. As connectivity has continued to extend in all of our different far-flung areas, we'd be able to rely more on fiber. Just pushing a lot of those services back into the cloud, where the digital product tends to handshake with the production team. It's become a lot easier for us to pass things off without that same concern of the dark art of encoding somehow getting in the way in a way that we have to kind of address. That's where we've seen a lot of success with fiber cross connects and really kind of planning out how we're going to go from one network to the next depending upon the vendor makeup that we work with. On the tech side, on the ad side, yeah, DAI is huge for us. we're an ad and sponsorship business. We don't currently offer a subscription model, and what's important for us is taking a global sponsor with us, and being able to promise them the ability to stitch up their various regional marketing team spend into one commercial break. So we can have summer inventory in Northern Hemisphere, winter inventory in the Southern Hemisphere, and serve that up to our global audience. It's all tuned at one time in the same commercial break. That's been a strength for our sponsorship team in being able to really demonstrate value to those sponsors throughout the season. And I don't think we could have produced it in any other way. When we started out, we were burning ads in from the truck, and it was very limiting. It limited the stories we could tell, and really the ways which we could kind of incorporate those folks. So that's been huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd echo what Rich said about proliferation of services into the cloud, and so giving us the ability to quickly scale up services around spikes for live events. The other thing I would add on a slightly different path that has been extremely helpful for us is our ability to mine all of the user comments and feedback that's out there in close to real time, and run that through categorization and sentiment analysis, topic modeling that'll allow us to identify issues that are happening in close to real time. And so when we have live events going on, or we have people engaging with our service, if there's some type of blip or disruption, we're able now to identify that so much faster than we ever could, and put ourselves in a position to then resolve it in a much shorter time frame.
Yeah, that's great, and that speaks to having a fan first kind of mission with your product. As you think about distribution, staying fan first, but recognizing that you sort of you're all global, you all have global reach, but you might approach markets differently, either because of relationships you have in those markets, or because you feel like the experience is actually meant to be different for different regional fans. How do you think about that sort of global strategy versus a regional strategy? And be very curious to understand where you think the real differences for each of your sports and your products are most prevalent. Jared, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I think that it's an interesting time where there's a lot of choices on how to distribute content, and so we spend a lot of time looking at it both from either the market or the channel's perspective, and saying what content do we think will work well in that particular market or channel. And then we also look at it from the other side, where we produce, every time we produce content, we say, what's the best way to distribute this content or some form of this content? And and so I think that we've done a good job of getting global reach, and I think that there's more we can do in localizing that experience in particular markets, and so that's a big push for us. And we have people on the ground in our key markets to get a sense of what works well there and what doesn't, so then we can tailor a strategy to that, and we think that's going to be a big growth avenue for us in the near future.
Yep.
Yeah, similar challenges. Brazil is one of our largest markets. The programmatic space there is nascent, is not as robust and mature as it is here in the States. So that creates some nuance in the way that we look at the opportunities down there from an advertiser perspective. That shapes the nature of our relationships with our broadcast partners in each of the different markets. I represent a bias in that I manage the direct channel, so I always run on the assumption that our core fans on our own platform are going to represent the biggest opportunity for us to tell a good story. And to that end, I try to treat the broadcast team as our user as well, and try to kind of provide as much value as we can to them by leveraging that core audience on our platform. If that leads to the broadcast being distributed via a linear partner in a territory that is more nuanced, we just see that as a value add to them, and see it as an opportunity to potentially even present ways in which they can participate in that interactivity or data sharing as part of that larger deal in those markets. But at the same time, it's always changing. So every time renewals come up, we're revising the strategy and kind of redrawing the map.
So I'm an ad guy, so I'm not going to act up here like I know what our global distribution policy is and things like that. But I can tell you that NASCAR.com and our direct owned and operated properties are generally U.S.-based audience. So, but one thing we did announce from a distribution perspective, we announced recently that we have a partnership with NBC Sports for NBC Sports Gold Track Pass. So we're going to be offering NASCAR qualifying, like NASCAR Cup qualifying and practices, along with our grassroots series, K&N, Wheel-In, and a few others. So really hard-nosed racing that I think our larger audience is going to be able to see. And when it comes to adding IMSA content, especially through NBC Sports, I think it's really going to help grow our global audience.
Yep. So, speaking of audience, right? You make these distribution decisions based on your overall strategy and where your users are, right? Where your fans are. Would love to understand, some interesting insights you've had in terms of customer acquisition, and I'm especially interested in the retention side of it, especially for those of you who represent subscription products. How do you keep fans engaged, and even for advertising or sort of free, freely available products, you still are trying to keep, fans engaged on those products, and whether they're, using money from their wallet to pay for a subscription, or frankly, taking time out of their day, to catch a live event. I'd be very interested to hear how you think about acquisition, but especially retention.
So I can start. I
Yeah.
mean, on the retention side, it's really just listening to the audience. I mean, we have a great live ops team that's taking in data from our users, during a live race, and even a lot of times we'll hear feedback, especially on NASCAR Drive, that we have too many ads, and even though it's a free experience to them, we're able to get that feedback, and we're able to use through Google Ad Manager, like we're able to dial up and down frequency of advertising, and the way our sponsorships are structured, we're able to still fulfill the ad campaign, even when we dial down some of the live streaming. And innovation's another thing for retention. I mean, you need to keep giving them as the audience something new and exciting. So whether it's 360 video or a VR experience, or just kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the industry, and trying new things, not being scared to take chances is a good way to keep your teams.
For us, we have a fantasy platform. That's kind of an obvious play, but the expectations that you put behind what a fantasy player represents to you compared to the average audience, is true and is worthy of the investment. In general, though, I would say, from the ways in which we bring our audience in, like I mentioned earlier, it obviously starts with that basic service information of, are we running or not? That the next step kind of breaks into, okay, we're going to allow fans to follow individual surfers, and we're going to tell them when specifically those surfers are entering the water. The area we're kind of trying to head further down into is actually set aside the service information and actually really focus on the story. So can we actually look at elements of the status of the competition at that moment? And you see this in other sports. I get the kind of 2-minute, the NBA push notification of a late stage lead change or something like that, where the message has content, that it's not just that service information of letting me know the status of something has changed, but it's trying to deliver that little story to get me to open up that push notification. And so that's really where we're trying to focus right now, is find better ways to find the story at greater scale without necessarily having to have an editorial team in each language, typing it up individually, but try to find ways where the data itself kind of shows us opportunities to pair up a message and get it to a fan who might not otherwise have been compelled to tune in because they had other things going on. But yeah, it tends to be leveraging those opportunities to either solicit a response from our fans through fantasy or through kind of, we allow them to pick winners in heats in a very kind of casual way. We make a lot of references in the broadcast to those picks, so the fans' voice is kind of present in the storytelling and the debate about who wins. That's kind of where we focus our time.
Yeah.
So we, I guess the basis of what we do is the age-old conflict of good versus evil, sprinkled in with some steel cages and steel chairs. So that storytelling is at the core of everything we do, and that's those narrative arcs that we craft of the good guy or girl known as the baby face, and the bad guy or girl known as the heel, and in an epic struggle for supremacy. And so that's at the core of everything we do. And how do we bring that storyline to life across all of our experiences? I think then we complement all of the creative excitement with a heavy dose of analytics and listening to our fans, and using that to do some things that are not as glamorous but can have a big impact on the business, like figuring out the best methods to retry credit cards that that don't have the proper setup on them, or something like that, which can have a big impact on the business. So.
Yeah. So as this kind of segues into monetization decisions, and I would say you can answer this, either on behalf of the decisions you've made at your organizations, or even just kind of at large, what you're seeing in the industry. How do you think about different monetization models, whether it's ad-supported, whether it's subscription, what we think of as like monthly subscription, or Rich, I mean, you introduced it, so we might as well add it in, almost the concept of real-time transactional, what the NBA is doing. Mm-hmm. How do you think about it for your sports, your experiences, and frankly, as someone who watches the industry and as a consumer, how do you reflect upon that?
Yeah, so we take a approach with trying to have a number of different revenue models. The ones that this room is probably familiar with are around our subscription business and our advertising business. But we're also licensing content, we're also selling merchandise, we're selling tickets to live events, we're licensing our IP. And in an ideal world, all of those will work well together, and if we can drive engagement with our fans, then it should raise all of those. We think it's really important to have that breadth of revenue models, because different fans are going to engage with our brand in different ways, and so we want to give have the opportunity to capture revenue from different aspects based on what market you're in, or what type of fan you are, or where you are in our funnel. So yeah, we do a lot around trying to optimize across all of those.
Yep.
For us in our sport, our opportunity is, our live broadcasts represent the peak performance on the championship tour, but we see opportunity to take license in kind of representing anyone's passion for the sport itself. And so, while the tour is supported in that ad sponsorship model, I think, going forward, we see a lot of opportunity in being able to really represent what surfing means to anyone who practices it or is drawn to it aspirationally or otherwise. This year, that's been reflected in a lot of investment we've made into a new studio arm. We've got WSL Studios producing a lot of original content outside of our broadcast, pairing up with different storytellers, telling compelling narratives in and out of the water around ways in which surfing or participation in the ocean has changed people's lives. And that's serves to complement that kind of live sports edge, which I can see over time ultimately evolving into a pretty comprehensive package of interests that represent what a surfer is looking for in their life. It may include things that are more utility focused, as well as access to content and new stories to watch, but all there to serve complementing not only our top tier broadcast live sports production, but anything that we see kind of representing the interest of surfers at large in general.
So from our side, it's, I think you got to be flexible, but NASCAR Drive in particular is strictly a sponsorship model. And that's worked out great for us, actually. It's a weekly sponsorship model. And I don't know how many times people in this room have had an advertiser RFP to answer, but they're pretty brutal. And they're always looking for something new, okay? So it's always like, I want something new, something different. And we're able to deliver that with NASCAR Drive. We give you, streaming, in-car camera streaming. So it's a really good product for our salespeople to go to market with. But like I said, you got to be flexible. With any organization, any publisher, you have the product team and the ad team. And the product team, it's kind of like cooks and waiters, right? The cooks make the food, and they're like, oh, this is amazing food, And the waiter comes in and is like, hey, they don't want broccoli on there. And the cook freaks out. So what happened on our side is, we got feedback from our users that they didn't want to have ads to watch Drive. So we actually made an app setting available where they could actually purchase a sponsorship model without ads. So kind of have to be flexible, maybe do both, but sponsorship is our bread and butter.
Yep. And then, so diving a little bit deeper into where you do monetize with ads, how do you think about, sort of the volume of activity or, your sales approach, leveraging programmatic versus direct sales, like highly custom kind of sponsorships today? And where would you like to see, the industry or your business head in terms of that kind of share? And sort of to that, is programmatic guaranteed, something that we talk about? Is that kind of the answer, or is that just, a part of the solution?
Yeah, I think, NASCAR.com is, I'd say, 70-30 direct sold. So, our sponsorship models and our advertisers, mainly the revenue coming in is direct sold. Programmatic also is a large part of our revenue, though. So, we really need to, focus on growing that side of the business. And I think you're right. Programmatic guaranteed is the only way that we can bring programmatic channels or programmatic, streams of revenue coming into our business outside of an open auction. The problem I'm seeing on my side is, programmatic guaranteed is basically direct selling inventory with programmatic pipes. And it's up to me to really educate my sales team or our sales team that this isn't a replacement to traditional sales, it's an enhancement to traditional sales. So actually, Richard on your team, Kiran, has put together a great deck that he's going to go over with my sales team to try to make them understand that programmatic guaranteed is actually a way for us to make more money on the direct sales side. So I think that's definitely the way that we're going to be able to adopt programmatic more largely.
That's great.
For us, again, the different market nuances always open up different opportunities. So programmatic can mean a lot to us in certain markets. It's always important to us to make sure we're kind of maximizing every opportunity we have. I think we always try to figure out what the right mix of user experiences are, of repetition or the makeup of advertiser pools that we're going to draw from. And I will say, it can be obvious to assume that fans just don't want to see ads and that they'll pay for it. And at the same time, we've had similar experiences where if you watch one of our broadcasts and you don't see brands that are clearly investing in the sport, it actually feels a little off. There's actually something nice about seeing a wetsuit company targeting you while you're watching a surfing broadcast, right? So I think there are a ton of ways that we can actually that serving ads is not bad to the fan who otherwise might see it as this kind of ugly necessary thing they have to kind of wait through to get on to the competition itself. But it then is contingent upon us to make sure that we're managing that inventory more effectively and with greater care. That's where a lot of those tools, being able to kind of have central management and really measure impact of it on the user experience has been really critical to us, where we've been very thankful, to see a lot of those interfaces advance, where we just have a better view of the job that we're doing to make sure that we're kind of delivering what we want.
So our focus definitely skews towards the sponsorship opportunities. We try to create those unique opportunities for brands to engage with WWE, with our IP and our talent, and put together a multifaceted package that includes event sponsorship and various types of brand integrations. So I think our focus skews in that direction. I still believe in the programmatic opportunity. I definitely think that what some people have described as a barbell, where you have the custom sponsorships on one side and programmatic on the other, with kind of everything that was in between the two moving outward. I think that is the direction the industry is going to go.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting hearing you all talk about sponsorships, and then Rich, what you were talking about the sort of credibility lent by making sure your endemic brands are a part of your sponsorship, part of the sort of the fan experience, the user experience. The flip side to that, I've worked with a couple esports organizations, is while they have the endemics, for the most part, and of course that's an important advertising or sponsor source. They've been doing a lot to reach out to sort of the non-endemic brands as a means of demonstrating, the reach and sort of credibility of esports as sports. So it's interesting to kind of mix, that endemic proof point with that non-endemic, let alone the revenue you're trying to generate.
Yeah, and in direct sold, I mean, being able to have our broadcast participating in some national campaigns from larger sponsors that may not necessarily be obvious, in their alignment with surfing, is definitely validation. Is a good thing. It proves out that our sales team is doing the right thing. So for sure, those things matter to us 100%. As does finding ways to more organically integrate sponsors into the broadcast or into their event experiences themselves. But at the same time, we'll still find those same folks looking for ways to add value to their teams that are looking for that more traditional advertising spot as well. That hasn't necessarily waned. So
yeah.
And I mean, just on the NASCAR side, sponsorships are so important to our fans. It's crazy. So, if you have a Chase Elliott fan and he gets targeted Napa ads, he's excited to see those Napa ads, or he or she is excited to see those Napa ads, And, back in the day if he was a Jimmy Johnson fan, when Jimmy Johnson had Lowe's and Tony Stewart had Home Depot, if they got a Home Depot ad, they're probably like, what's going on here? I'm, never coming back to this website again. So, advertisers are so important to NASCAR, and it's so important for us to target properly, and we're able to do that, so that's good.
Yeah. Let's move to industry collaboration. So we have folks in the room who represent platforms, solution providers, content owners. Where do you see your peers in the industry best coming together to solve specific problems or opportunities in the space?
Yeah, my first thought is I think this is an area of opportunity. I think that there probably are more ways we can work together. The places I've seen it happen most are when we have partners or vendors that help organize some collaboration, or provide some industry data that then can spark some conversation. I think that there's some areas that we all bump up against, whether it's password sharing or metadata structure to support all the various platforms and feeds out there. where, yeah, I think some collaboration, some standards could really go a long way. So, yeah, I don't know if I have the exact answer. I agree. It's an opportunity that I think a lot of people could benefit from.
Yep.
For us, I mean, when we identify something that we realize we want to set our sights on and try and solve, it doesn't necessarily come at the time that you would imagine. It doesn't necessarily start with a formal RFP and then we're receiving responses and we're going through the process of making the decision. It might happen more organically as we're focusing on something else. An example of which would be we're a subjective sport, which has some inherent challenges in being able to kind of anchor decisions that happen in the broadcast. So we've talked a lot about adding a layer of objectivity. That's led to a ton of exploration in the space of wearables and measurement at our contests or ways in which we can leverage different tools in the cloud to be able to provide similar kind of level of analysis. For us, we know that machine vision is really powerful, or has the potential to be very, very powerful. And at the same time, it's very challenging for us to figure out who we should be talking to. That a lot of the cloud tools that are out there are fantastic, and at the same time, they're not quite yet ready to be picked up off the shelf and just used on day one. And so, in that space, there's a ton of opportunity for the folks at the different cloud companies to introduce us to the right people to help kind of foster collaboration. Those collaborations in past areas around analytics or advertising or streaming have been really fruitful for us. And I think for the folks running those clouds, it's been useful to be able to really see their products getting used and road tested in interesting ways that hopefully provide insights as well. So that's been our experience. It's really been trying to find those right partners to help us break into a new space that we admittedly are not as versed in, but that we can at least recognize a significant opportunity in.
Yeah.
So my answer is going to be totally selfish, and you're asking like how we can come together and solve a problem, right? Can we stop the "we'll be right back" advertising slate while I'm watching a sporting event, please? I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm so engaged, and I know I'm a valuable impression. I'm worth money, okay? And I'm sitting there watching a sporting event, we go to a quarter or a period, and I'm just sitting there watching a pulsating slate that says, "We'll be right back." So, I mean, I'd rather see a picture of a daffodil or a pro bono ad or, anything. I want to see an ad in that situation. We just need to figure that out. I mean, I came from USA Today, and I remember when we moved from print to digital, I can only imagine back then if we had a space on the page that said, "Advertising coming soon," people would be like, "What is going on here?" So, again, very selfish, nothing to do with NASCAR really, but I need that problem solved.
Yeah, slate's a real issue. I agree. So if you can share, what are some of your big bets or the number one big bet that you're making at your organization, whether it's built around a trend, something like 5G, or other just like kind of advancements or innovation that's happening? Where do you think you want to make that bet? You want to start?
Sure. So two thoughts come to mind. One is localization, and we've gotten our WWE experience is in every market around the world, but we think there's a big opportunity to start localizing it for those markets, and that goes the full gamut of the experience, from what content are we producing, how are we distributing it, to how are we selling our merchandise, how are we looking for subscriptions, what payment methods do we allow, what currencies do we accept, what pricing do we have. So there's a huge opportunity there to do that across a lot of big regions. And the other thing that I would say for us is leveraging AI and machine learning to help us continue to handle the vast amount of content and data that we have. So we have on our WWE Network product right now, we have about 11,000 hours of programming, and we've been able to go into that 11,000 hours of programming and identify close to 100,000 moments within that, so that you can go directly to the Hulk Hogan body slam of Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. which I'm sure all of you remember well.
There's a great documentary.
Yes, the Andre the Giant documentary is great, great TV if you haven't seen that. So yeah, from using that for our content, using that with our fan data to help create personalized experiences, using it to help comb through the vast amount of feedback we're getting. I think that's really a game-changing thing for us in the coming years.
For us, continuing to find better ways to make a broadcast more efficient to produce. I mentioned a few things, investments in machine vision. I see a ton of opportunity in being able to take our sport and break it down and kind of pick apart the individual maneuvers of surfers and really kind of add an objective layer to our storytelling. In addition to some introduction of devices, in our competitions and being able to just continually, tell a better story. We reference, this is a side example, we reference the rabbit cam in poker as being a really amazing innovation for that. It's a sport. It's a sport. It's a sport.
Yeah.
Where what it did was it created a knowledge imbalance where the fan knew more than the player, and that allowed them to critique the player's ability to exact their strategy. In our world, it would be the equivalent of having a countdown clock to when the next wave is going to arrive. That would give that viewer the ability to see, is this surfer taking advantage of the opportunity that as it's happening. And we something like that would be pretty incredible for us. So we're trying to figure out if there are some opportunities for us there. But yeah, it's really taking advantage of a lot of the amazing tools that are coming out around data management and asset management that we think are powerful.
Yeah, for us, I think it's just, new tech and data. So kind of when I was telling everyone about the Ryan Blaney story at the NASCAR Roval, at the Charlotte Roval, VR, how great would it have been, I'm a big PlayStation VR fan, but how great would it have been if I experienced that 360 moment with a VR headset? Actually sitting shotgun with my favorite driver and actually watching that wreck and him win the race. So I think, AR and VR is, something that can really build our sport to a level that, would be like being in a car, like being in a driver. And, my kids are going to consume information totally different than we are. I'm sure when they're my age, it's going to be like Ready Player One around here. Everybody's going to have a headset running around, Now, from the data side, we get so much telemetry and just information from cars and, kind of just building that more into our products, I think, could give the user so much insight and so much knowledge about what's going on in the sport. Kind of like, is the surfer hitting the wave at the right time? It's like, is our driver utilizing that data properly? And
Yeah.
we'd be able to critique that.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a minute. I'm going to ask one last question, kind of a surprise question, although you guys had a preview. It was your idea, actually, at dinner. Favorite sports movie to stream, since we're at Streaming Media West. I'll give you a second since I sort of dropped this on you and just say Blue Chips. That was my favorite sports movie. Nick Nolte, Shaq, Penny Hardaway. Great movie. Brendan, do you want to?
So I'll give you three, and they're all associated with us. One's Days of Thunder, of course, right? Or you can say Talladega Nights, but I'll say Days of Thunder. North Shore, which is a surfing movie. It's amazing.
Oh, you're stealing mine.
Oh, no.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. You're fine. It's fine. I'll pick something else.
And then No Holds Barred, of course. Starting Hulk Hogan and Zeus. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'm supposed to say like Blue Crush or something. I'm not, yeah. But no, North Shore is honestly one of my favorite movies. I'll stick with that one.
Point Break.
Yeah, Point Break. Thank you.
Smart, yeah. I'll go with Rudy.
Yeah.
The epic story of a baby face.
Yeah.
Overcoming all odds.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining me on stage today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.